Hey everyone, Gary here from Echidna Sewing, and today I want to show you one of my favourite little tips for preventing fabric movement in the hoop while you're embroidering. I'm sure you've all experienced that, where sometimes you get to the end of a design and the outline hasn't lined up perfectly, or you've got a bit of puckering or something going on, and often that's caused by fabric pulling and pushing in the hoop while you're embroidering, and that's due to just not being held securely. Really difficult to stop on, particularly on hoops that have square edges. So we're going to actually take a look at that now, and I've just got a simple bit of fabric with a cutaway backing here. We're going to play with that, and what I've got here is a standard 5x7 or 130 by 180 embroidery frame for one of our brother machines. Great little frame. It's an adjustable screw, slide on, nice and easy to use. And typically with all standard hoops, you've got two parts to it. You've got the outer ring, which is the, in this case, will be underneath the fabric, and the inner ring, which goes on top. Now, of course, if you had a multi-needle machine, it would be the other way around, but that's a different story. But the same rules apply. You've still got an inner and an outer ring to a standard hoop. And what we do is we need to prevent the fabric slipping on the edges. And now, most commonly what happens is when you've got fabric in the hoop, the weakest part of the hoop is going to be down these sides, the longer edges, and that's where fabric can easily get pulled and pushed. So I've just put that hoop ring into position, and if I start tapping that ever so gently, I can see the fabric is actually moving and pulling in just there. So that's what we want to prevent, is the fabric slipping just at those points. I also point out at this stage, when you're hooping up with a standard hoop ring on a standard hoop, you should be able to push the hoop in relatively easily but firmly, and if it's too tight and you've got to virtually get a hammer to knock it in, that means this screw is too tight. Undo that a little bit. There's no dramas if you're hooping something if you have to tighten this screw by a turn or two at the end. That's perfectly okay, but you don't want to have to, really force that hoop into place. That's how you break hoops, etc. Now, what we would do on a traditional hoop like this is we would take our wonderful little 6mm Express It double-sided tape. I love this product. We've been using it for years. Fantastic product. 50 meters of it. And in order to use it on a standard hoop, we just take this tape, find the end, and run a ring of this tape around the perimeter of the inner ring. So I'm just going to start just here. Hopefully the camera's picking this up, and I'm just run that all the way around. It's inexpensive. One application will do multiple hooping, so you just leave it on until it has really no more tack left. And it's just an absolute lifesaver when it comes to slippery, difficult fabrics. And when we get to the end there, we just peel that off and then just peel the paper off, and we now have a little tacky sort of feel around the hoop. So if I now take my piece of fabric and make sure that's flat and nice and firm, and then we just gently work that in. And what will happen now is, I've probably got a bit too much fullness there, I'm just going to pull that out a little bit while I can. I can just get rid of that little bit of fullness. Now, if this was a stretched fabric, I'd be very careful, because I wouldn't want to stretch the fabric while I'm getting that bit of fullness gone there. And that's almost perfectly out of position, or being taken out of the hoop. And now there's far less likelihood that the fabric is going to pull and move or slip in the hoop than I had without the tape. So it's a great little hack, and it works brilliantly and will save your bacon so many times. Now, when you take that out, little tip, when you're taking the sticky stuff off the hoop, the easiest way to do it is to find the end and then just peel it, roll it, and it'll roll off. If you leave it on there for weeks on end, it'll get a little bit harder to take off. So I recommend changing it after every 4 or 5 projects perhaps in that hoop, and it really is quite easy to roll off. And there we go. So that's all gone. As I said, very inexpensive and a game changer. Now, what about magnetic hoops? And in particular, we now sell the dime hoops as well, which are fantastic. And you do experience some fabric movement even on magnetic hoops. So let's just go and revisit this. So we'll take this standard hoop here, move this out the way. And typically, if we put this piece of fabric down, we'll just position that where we need it to be. There we go. So I can, you know, again, take that fullness out there, that's fine. But I'll have the same problem. As I'm embroidering, I can get a bit of slippage between the magnetic ring and the base. So I find the easiest way to deal with that is again using the double-sided tape along the bottom of the magnetic ring. Just run some strips down there. And it's really quick and simple. Again, really inexpensive because this stuff is really not too expensive at all. And there's 50 meters on a roll, so it goes a long way. And trust me, it will give you a great result and help prevent all that fabric movement that is often blamed on the machine when it's not the machine at all, it's just hooping, etc. And once we've got that on there, just peel them off. And again, if you've got fingernails, it makes it a whole lot easier to work with this stuff. Otherwise, a pair of tweezers can also be good to get the thing started. That one's being a little bit tricky for me. There it goes. And this one here. There's a little tip that you can fold it over the edge and it's easier to get off that way, but I didn't, so we just did it the hard way. And now when I put that into position, feel for my hoop, there it is, and get my fabric centered. Now again, I will pull out the fullness, but already I can tell that takes a lot more effort to pull that fullness out there. But once I do, I can guarantee you that it's going to hold that fabric so much more securely, and I'm going to get far less movement on the fabric during the stitching process. And the things that cause that are just the size of the stitch count. If you've got a big stitch count design, you've got a lot of penetrations of the needle, you've got a lot of tension pulling on the thread, and it does want to pull that fabric, and it so often will actually move in the hoop, and it's not the machine's fault, it's just the way it is. And that product, that double-sided tape, this one here, will all but eliminate a lot of that fabric movement. So anyway, one of my favorite little tips. Hope that helps. You can use it on the dime magnetic frames or your standard hoops or pretty much anywhere you think it's going to work. It's a great product to have in your sewing room and a real game changer. So happy embroidering. Cheers.